Hey, good morning everyone, it's Tractor Man 44 here. You guys have probably recognized this old H if you watched very many of my videos. I've already got the engine oil changed, filter changed out, the filter element and everything. And then all of a sudden I thought, I just missed an opportunity to make a little bit of a video specifically for people that are new to older tractors. I'm not a big Farmall guy. I like all tractors, you know. I'm mostly a Massey Harris fella. So some of the things about this I'm kind of guessing at because I just don't know. This is the one I put on that special diameter. It's a little diameter one wire alternator. Converted this over to 12 volts and I had to make this bracket for it. And at the same time I went ahead and converted this to a voltmeter instead of an ammeter. You see when you pull the switch on, you can see the static voltage on the battery, so you can tell if your battery is weak right off the bat before you ever even try starting it, especially in cold weather. And then if it's really weak or whatever, you just go ahead and put it on a charger. And the cool thing about it is being able to see the static voltage at, you know, roughly 12.6 or whatever volts. As soon as it starts up and the alternator begins its output, you can actually see the output reflect on the reading on the voltage, the voltmeter scale or the voltage scale, and you'll see it jump up to above 14 volts, about 14.6 I think it is, or something like that. Now when I change the oil, inside this canister, when you take this nut off, is the filter element. I can't remember what the number is on it. I think I put a Fram element back in, but I took off the old rounded off plug that's under here and replaced it with a 1/4 inch threaded brass pipe plug so that I can actually pull that out and drain all the oil out of there, drain the canister down. Some of it kind of stays in there a little bit and you just get oil all over the place. Doesn't really matter on an old tractor, but if you got a fancy tractor that's all painted up, you'd probably want to drain that out of there. You can also see down here a change I made underneath here. You see a sharp nipple and a pipe cap. I probably need to back that out and put a pipe plug in there. I did not have one because this here extending down low might have a tendency to catch on some underbrush or a stump or something out in the woods and snap that off, because it originally comes with a pipe plug, but it had been misshapen so badly by pipe wrenches over the time that it was rounded plumb off, and I had one devil of a time getting that out. I went ahead and put that on for temporary. It'll last there until the next oil change, I'm sure. And then up here, without a dipstick on these guys here, a lot of these old Farmalls, they use the petcock. Okay, you've got a lower petcock here. When you back it off, it exposes an opening from inside the oil sump, you know, to outside. And if you open this up and no oil comes out, you know you're at least a quart or quart and a half low on oil. So you can go ahead and close that off, open up the top petcock, and then go ahead and add oil into the oil filler cap up top. I'll show you that in a second. And then add it slowly, and then whenever you start seeing the oil drip out right here, you know you've got an adequate supply. Close that petcock and you're topped off. Of course, that's providing the tractor is sitting on a firm level surface like in here on the concrete. And right here on the front of the engine, at the front of your distributor drive, is your engine oil fill port right here. So once you've poured into there, of course, this drives off of the distributor drives off your camshaft, so it picks up lubrication out of your out of the engine oil circuit, you know, for lubrication of all this componentry, and then drains back down into the sump. Now this is pretty much standard with all the old tractors. The final drive area here, where all your bowl gears are and everything that run the rear wheels, always drains from the lowest point on the very back, or usually always drain from the lowest point towards the rear end of the final drive housing. So you need to pull this plug out here. Of course, the drawbar swings off to one side and set your container under here and catch all of it. Now there's a point that I want to make right now, and that's the condensation that occurs sometimes on these crankcases and these transmission housings. I don't know how that condensation gets in there, but it does, and it'll accumulate over the years, and you'll actually have a level of water down at the very bottom, which in severe cases, and I've had this happen to myself, it'll actually in extreme weather freeze and hold the bowl gears in place, and you have to work like crazy rocking back and forth in order to break the ice in order to get the tractor to pull out of its tracks. You want to minimize that from happening, so you always want to pull the plug out until it starts seeping a little bit, and if it seeps water, you can just let it sit there and drip and drip and drip until that little bit of water gets out of there. You know, and if you know for a fact that you've got good quality rear end grease in your rear end lubricant, you can just drain the water out, plug it back up and go again. Which brings us to another point. This has got a multi-level sump, so there's a drain plug at the very front of this too. We're going to go look at that now. Okay, now I'm in the front of the transmission, right below the clutch. Right here's the bottom of the clutch, and of course your brake and everything inside here. This right here is your drawbar. So I'm right in front of the clutch where the clutch pedal depresses. Now I don't know, but I assume this right here is going to be the fill plug that you'll back out whenever you're adding the new rear end grease, and when it starts to ooze out the very bottom of this hole, you should be level. I have to verify that. It's the only plug I can find, so I'm going to assume that that's going to be the case. You can see how the sump actually lowers here in the front, okay, as well as the main sump back in the back, but this necessitates pulling this plug out up here in front. Now this is where I'm going to show you something that kind of surprised me just a little bit. Because like I said, this has been sitting in here all winter. I just started it up the other day and literally took it right around the circle one time and brought it back and put it in. I'm kind of glad I did, because I noticed the rear end was howling, so I wanted to check the rear end grease before I went any farther. I just pulled that plug, and this is when I thought that I should be doing a video, because when I pulled the plug, nothing but water came out. And so, not a tremendous amount. Oh, a good quart and a half of pure water. This is what's really scary. I'm going to stick my screwdriver in there, thinking it was plugged up. You know, just the rear end grease, the 140 or something might just be plugged up. But, believe it or not, there's nothing but a little bit of sludge and rust coming out of there. You can see that the nasty brown. There's literally no rear end lubricant up in here. So it's either low enough on lubricant to where all of it that's in here is in that bottom sump, or that larger rear sump, or for whatever reason there's little or no lubricant in it at all. So now we're going to go back to the back end and pull that plug off back there and take a look and see what happens back there. Back here under the rear end now, here's your square plug. Now that's going to be like a 3/4 inch pipe plug, and that's going to be like a 13/16 square head. But remember, it's a square head, okay? 3 times 4 is 12, so that means that there's got to be a multiple of 4 that will fit that in a 12 point. So it's always going to be, on these larger ones, it's going to be possibly 1/8 of an inch larger. So if that's a 13/16, it's going to take a 15/16 wrench. So I got a 15/16 wrench. I'm going to stick that on there. Yeah, and that fits snug. Now, I like to use the 12 point simply because you have twice the amount of chances not to round it off. If you have a cheap brand, now this here's a Challenger, it's an adequate brand, but I've got the correct size of 13/16 on here, and you want to put a lot of pressure on it. What happens, even though they look all fancy, what happens on a cheaper tool, the jaw literally spreads, and you can watch it specifically on the smaller diameter, or the smaller size wrenches, like 1/2 inch, 9/16, whatever. Put on a grade 8 bolt one time and put a lot of pressure on it and just watch those jaws spread. Well, that happens on these larger cheap wrenches just as well. Now, I don't really know what quality Challenger is. They seem to be all right, but like a Snap-on or a Mac or a Blue Point, something like that, even the old Craftsman's, which had higher quality, would not spread. But eliminate that potential by using a 12 point. So you can see this thing here has not been out in a long time. Surprisingly, it's not too tight. Of course, you very seldom ever expect them to be tight, because after all, there's all kinds of lubricant in and around. So if it's seeping or leaking, oh, that's a full 1 inch thread on this one. That's not a 3/4. But see, once you get it loose, if I had a 13/16 here, it'd be easy just to go ahead and spin the rest of it off with the 13/16. You can also put a socket on that. You can use a 12 point socket. It doesn't have to be an end wrench. Okay, look right here. See what I'm saying? You can see a drip right there. There's water. So if I can get this just right, hopefully I'll be able to drain some water right out. Because see, I'm sitting here and I'm sprawled out behind this, and there's a lot of weight in there because the oil or lubricant is going to be riding on top of the water. So you got the weight of that on there. And so if you're sitting right behind it like I am here, and you pull this plug out, it could squirt this stuff out of here, about 18 inches or whatever, or more, and really get you all nasty and wet. I did a video named Slow as Molasses in January, to where when I pulled the plug out of a Massey Harris 30 that had been frozen up, and you can watch the 140 weight original oil coming out of that rear end. I'm going to stop that for a minute because there is quite a lot of water there. What I did, once I saw there was so much water coming out of there, I stopped and drained it out of my oil pan I've got under here, because I don't want that to contaminate, all that water to contaminate the rest of the recycled oil. So I went ahead and got me this little bucket, I'm going to try to catch water directly into the bucket. Whoa! I gotta get another bucket. I'm not sure there's going to be any rear end lubricant in this rear end at all. There's the remnants of whatever oil was in there. Looks like that might be old 140 weight. Okay, the cleanup begins. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put 5 gallons of diesel fuel in this thing, and I'm going to run around with that diesel fuel in there, and we're going to slush all that nasty grit and grime and dilute it and get it all out of there as much as we can. But right now, I'm going to drag as much of it out the back here as I can. I've just taken a little scrap piece of wood and whittled it down where it would fit inside the opening. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and scratch around in here and get as much more of this out of here as I can. Then we're going to go about the business of putting 5 gallons of diesel fuel in, and then we'll run around a little bit, and slosh it up pretty good. Get her up in road gear a little bit, get everything banging around in there pretty fair, and thin some of this stuff out. Drain that again, see how much more we get out. Right up here in the front of the transmission, you'll see your pipe plug, and it's going to have a 3/4 inch square drive that you have to reach in there to pull that out. I sprayed a little WD on it an hour or so ago while we were working on that back end. Oh, it took nothing to break this one loose. Man, I've had them before where they were absolutely horrible to break loose. This is just a standard 1.5 inch NPT National Pipe Thread. The gears look really good from up here. So we're going to put some diesel fuel in there and slosh it around. Hey guys, just a moment of seriousness now. Right now, what I'm getting ready to do, this is something that gets some people killed. Sometimes gets a leg broke, It does some damage to them. Bear in mind that I am not suggesting that you guys ever attempt to do the things that I do. As a matter of fact, I make it explicit that I have no intention of doing how-to videos. It's just how I do them. Now, I've been around farm machinery and equipment and heavy stuff my whole life. I do things that people probably think are just a little bit not cool. But it doesn't matter. I'm not going to listen to you if y'all tell me that I'm doing something stupid or whatever, because I'm doing what works for me. You do what you do with safety in mind all the time. So I've got this up on blocks and I'm going to set on the seat and I'm going to exercise this to get that sloshing around because I want to get it done. I'm going to show you what I've got it setting on under this side here. Now this is a jack stand, but it's not your Harbor Freight jack stand. It's not your Sears and Roebuck jack stand. This is an industrial jack stand that's made specifically to work on heavy equipment. This one has been damaged, but even damaged, this thing is well beyond what's needed to support one portion of a little old tractor that probably only weighs about 3,800 pounds. There, you can see the substantial construction of that jack stand. That's made out of 6-inch box tubing with a steel plate on top. It's a 5/8 inch thick steel plate on top of it. And if you notice, the holes at the very top have been collapsed. But that was because it had a monstrous track hoe on it, and it was just beyond its capacity. I don't know what the track hoe weighed, but it damaged it. That's what I'm using on this side here, well beyond. And over on this side, I've got a stack of 6x6s all the way up, and I still have the hydraulic jack underneath the drawbar in the back, just as a redundancy or as a backup. It's never advisable to start a tractor from the ground level here alongside of it, but sometimes you have to. But you always want to do your gear shifter handshake before you do anything else. And of course we know it's up on block safely. The float is sticking on this one here. I found that out yesterday or day before yesterday. So I got to be a little careful when I start this, which is why I'm standing right here. I turn the gas on, give her a little choke. totally safe. I kept my foot on the clutch the whole time, had both feet on the brakes. I was alternating the left brake and right brake so that I could increase the speed of the opposing final drive to get that to slosh around. I literally got the diesel fuel to sloshing out of the fill cap up top, and it's nasty looking too. So I'm going to go ahead and drain this out. May do it a second time. Now again, let me re-emphasize, do not do what I say. Definitely don't do what I do. It could have come off of there, but it doesn't matter. I got both feet on the brake, got my foot on the clutch. I wide open the door here. If it came off the things, it'd just kind of jerk around a little bit, you know, wouldn't hurt nothing. Okay, remember just a few minutes ago in the video, I told you that whenever you flush your transmission, rear end, final drive, all that with diesel, a lot of times you'll find out where seals are leaking because the diesel fuel is so much thinner than your 80, 90, or obviously your 140. Now if you take a look up here, this looks to be the input shaft to the belly pump here, the hydraulic belly pump, and there's a seal right there. You see that continual drip right there? The seal on that shaft is leaking. And if you look up a little bit higher, yes, right up there, that's the input shaft to the transmission, right off of the crankshaft to the tractor. That seal is also leaking up there. It may not leak when I put 80, 90 in, but it probably will. So guess what that means? That means we're going to have to do what's necessary to replace those two seals. Now while that's all churned up in there, I'm going to go ahead and drain this out of here. Got to be ready for a mess. Now if I leave that in there, that'll saturate with the remnants and it'll go ahead and wick out and drip right into the bucket. Hey, on a side note, right here in front of the belt pulley, you'll see this cap. This cap will screw off, and this is your hydraulic reservoir, your hydraulic sump. And under this cap will be your dipstick. It'll record whether it's full or needing any hydraulic fluid. It just rests down in there and just sets on that, on the top of that fitting, and this just screws back down on top of it. This one's dry as a bone. That lower shaft is what turns the hydraulic pump, and when you want to engage the hydraulics, you pull this lever right here backwards. When you pull this lever backwards right here, that engages the hydraulics and allows your hydraulics to start pumping pressure. Well guys, there's a couple of do's and don'ts for you. The do's is do watch Tractorman 44 videos. The don'ts is don't do what I say or do, you know what I mean? Because it'll get you hurt, you know, if you're not really on your toes. I make no bones about telling you that too, because these things will hurt you. You just got to have your wits about yourself, keep your head on straight, and just go ahead and work on them, tinker on them, make them go. Anybody can do it if I can do it. This turned out to be a more comprehensive and more lengthy video, more involved video than what I intended. I really intended on just showing you all the oil ports and things like that, you know, and then also how to drain the rear end lubricant out, and then one thing led to another. But you know what, that's the way it is with these old things. No matter what it is you're working on, it doesn't matter if it's an old motorcycle or an old truck or an old tractor, you know. Old things need tinkering. They need to be taken care of a little bit at a time. So you know what, this is Tractorman 44, and I'm out of here, guys.